I never thought my own children would leave me to freeze to death on Christmas Eve, but there I was at 78 years old, sitting on the cold concrete steps of what used to be my daughter's welcoming home, watching my breath turn to ice crystals while the sound of laughter and clinking champagne glasses echoed through the windows above me. The door was locked, the lights were warm and golden inside, and my family, my own flesh and blood, had made it clear that there was no room for me at their table or anywhere in their lives. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Dorothy Mae Washington, and until 6 months ago, I thought I was one of the lucky ones. I had raised 3 beautiful children in my little yellow house on Maple Street, worked 2 jobs to put them through college, and spent my retirement years believing that all those sacrifices had been worth it. My children were successful. Patricia was a real estate agent, Michael worked in finance, and Sandra was a nurse practitioner. They all had nice homes, good jobs, and families of their own. I was so proud, but pride, I've learned, can make you blind to things you don't want to see. It started small, like most betrayals do. After I had that fall in my bathroom back in June, nothing serious, just slipped on a wet spot and bruised my hip. Patricia insisted I couldn't live alone anymore. "Mama, what if something worse had happened?" she said, sitting in my kitchen while I made her favorite peach cobbler, same as I'd been doing for 52 years. "What if you'd hit your head? We can't be worrying about you like this." I should have paid attention to how she said, "can't be worrying," instead of, "we love you and want you safe." But when you love someone, you hear what you hope they mean, not what they actually say. "I'm fine, baby," I told her, setting a warm slice in front of her. "Been taking care of myself and everyone else for 7 decades. I think I can manage." But Patricia had that determined look she'd gotten as a child when she wanted something. "Mama, I've already talked to Michael and Sandra. We think it's best if you come stay with me for a while, just until we can figure out a more permanent solution." The word permanent should have been my first warning. I moved into Patricia's spare bedroom on a Tuesday in July, bringing just a suitcase and my Bible, thinking it would be temporary. Patricia's house was beautiful, all marble countertops and fancy furniture that looked like it came from a magazine. But it never felt like home. "Don't touch that, Mama," became Patricia's most common phrase. "Don't touch the thermostat. Don't use the good towels. Don't cook in her kitchen because I might mess up her expensive pans. Don't rearrange the pillows on the couch. Don't. I started spending most of my time in that little back bedroom, feeling like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. But I told myself it was just an adjustment period. Patricia was busy with work and her own family. Her husband, Robert, was polite but distant, and their teenage kids, Jasmine and Marcus, barely looked up from their phones when I tried to talk to them. I reminded myself that families today were just different, more rushed, more stressed. Then I started noticing the phone calls. Patricia would get calls and step outside or go to another room, lowering her voice. When I asked who it was, she'd say, "Oh, just work stuff, Mama," but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Michael started coming by more often, but he wasn't coming to see me. He'd sit at Patricia's dining room table, with papers spread out, both of them talking in hushed tones that stopped whenever I walked into the room. "Just handling some business, Mama," Michael would say, gathering up the papers quickly. "Nothing for you to worry about." But I'd raised these children. I knew when they were up to something. The first real sign of trouble came in September. I needed to go to my house to get my winter clothes and some of my prescription medicines I'd forgotten. "Oh, Mama," Patricia said, not looking up from her laptop. "We can't do that right now. I'm swamped with work. I can take the bus," I offered. "I still have my keys." Patricia looked up then, and something cold flashed across her face. "Actually, Mama, we had to change the locks, for security reasons." My heart skipped. "Change the locks? On my house? It's still your house?" she said quickly. There were some break-ins in the neighborhood. We wanted to keep your things safe while it's empty." I sat down hard on her leather couch. "Empty, but all my things are perfectly safe," Michael said, walking into the room like he'd been listening from the hallway. "We're taking care of everything, Mama. That's what family does." But if they were taking care of everything, why did I feel so helpless? The months passed in a blur of small humiliations and growing isolation. My friends from church tried to call, but Patricia said I needed to rest and took messages that never seemed to get passed along. When I asked to go to Sunday service at Mount Olive Baptist, where I'd been a member for 40 years, Sandra said the car was in the shop. When I asked again the next week, Patricia said I might catch something with my weakened immune system. But I'm not sick, I protested. Prevention? Mama? Patricia said in that tone she used to use when I told her to clean her room. Better safe than sorry. By November, I felt like I was disappearing. I'd sit in that back bedroom, looking out at the small garden Patricia never used, and wonder how my life had become so small. I'd gone from having my own home, my own routine, my own life, to being a burden someone else had to manage. That's when I started paying closer attention to those hushed conversations. The day before Thanksgiving, I was walking to the bathroom when I heard Patricia and Michael talking in the kitchen. I know eavesdropping is wrong, but when you feel like you're becoming invisible, sometimes you have to listen to know you still exist. The papers are almost ready, Michael was saying. The lawyer says we can have everything transferred by the end of the year. And the house? Patricia asked. Already have a buyer interested. Johnson says we can get at least $250 for it, maybe more. The market's hot right now. My legs nearly gave out. They were selling my house, my house. The house where I'd brought all three of them home from the hospital. The house where I'd nursed them through chicken pox, and helped them with homework, and held them when their hearts got broken. The house I thought I'd die in someday, surrounded by memories and love. What about the bank accounts? Patricia asked. Power of attorney covers all of that. Once she's settled in the facility, we'll have everything sorted. Split 3 ways, just like we agreed. Facility. The word hit me like a slap. I made it back to my room somehow, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the doorknob. I sat on the edge of that narrow bed, not even my bed, because my bed was in the house they were selling, and tried to understand what I'd just heard. My children, the babies I'd sacrificed everything for, were planning to put me in some facility and divide up my life's work like vultures over roadkill. The house I'd paid off with 40 years of seamstress work, the savings account I'd built penny by penny, the life insurance policy I'd kept paying on even when money was tight, all of it was going to them, and I was going to where? That night. I barely slept. Every sound in the house made me wonder if they were in there right now, signing more papers, making more plans for my life without bothering to include me in the decisions. The next morning, Thanksgiving morning, I tried to act normal. I got up early, thinking maybe I could help with the cooking, do something useful, feel like part of a family again. But when I walked into the kitchen, Patricia looked at me like I was interrupting something important. Mama, why don't you go rest a little more? This is a lot of work, and we have it handled. I've been cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 50 years, I said quietly. I think I can help. Times have changed, Mama. We do things differently now. I stood there in my own daughter's kitchen, wearing the same apron I'd worn for decades, and realized I was no longer welcome in my own traditions. The rest of that day was a blur of sitting quietly while my family laughed and talked around me like I was a piece of furniture. When people asked how I was doing, Patricia would answer for me. When someone mentioned missing my famous sweet potato pie, Patricia said, "Oh, Mama doesn't cook much anymore." I wanted to scream that I'd never stopped wanting to cook. I'd just been stopped from cooking, but the worst was yet to come. After Thanksgiving, the whispered conversations got more urgent. Sandra started coming by with clipboards and forms. Michael brought a notary. And through it all, they smiled at me and called me Mama and acted like loving children, while they systematically erased my independence. The breaking point came 3 weeks later, on December 15th, when I overheard a phone call that changed everything. Patricia was in her bedroom with the door cracked, talking to someone on the phone. I was walking past on my way to the bathroom when I heard my name. No, Dorothy's fine with it, Patricia was saying. She understands it's for the best. The facility has an opening January 2nd, and we want to get her settled right after the holidays. I pressed closer to the door, my heart pounding. Shady Grove Manor. I know it's not the fanciest place, but it's what we can afford on her income. Once we free up the assets from the house sale, we might be able to move her somewhere nicer eventually. Might. Eventually, the words that mean never when your children say them. She won't fight it. Patricia continued. She's been confused lately. Forgetful. It'll be easy to convince her it's what she wants. I stepped back from that door like it was on fire. Confused, forgetful. I'd never been sharper in my life, but I realized then what they were doing. They weren't just stealing my money and my home. They were stealing my story, rewriting me as a confused old woman who couldn't take care of herself, who needed their guidance, who should be grateful for their help. That night, I lay in that narrow bed and made a decision. I wasn't going to let them erase me without a fight. But first, I needed to know exactly what I was fighting against. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. The next morning, Patricia and Robert left early for some Christmas shopping, and the kids were at school. I had the house to myself for the first time in months. I knew Patricia kept important papers in her home office. The room she'd told me was off limits because it contained sensitive work documents. But those weren't work documents I was interested in. They were my life documents. It took me 20 minutes to find them, hidden in a folder labeled Estate Planning in her bottom desk drawer. But when I opened that folder, my hands started shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. Power of attorney forms with my signature, except I'd never signed them. Bank transfer authorizations. A deed transfer for my house with a sale date of January 15th. Application forms for Shady Grove Manor, complete with a medical assessment claiming I had moderate dementia and required supervised care. But the worst thing, the thing that broke my heart completely, Trisha's writing asset distribution house sale proceeds $265 less savings accounts of $47,000 for life insurance cash value $23,000 or $335,000 total. Split 3 ways to $166,667 each. Nursing care costs approximately $3,200 month from Social Security fluff pension. Net gain to family $335,000 and net gain to family, I was a line item in their budget. A problem to be solved. A burden that would finally pay them back for all those years of pretending to love me. I put the papers back exactly as I'd found them, but I memorized every detail. Then I walked back to my room, sat on that narrow bed, and cried for the first time since I'd moved into Patricia's house. Not just tears, but the kind of deep, body, shaking sobs that come when you realize the people you've trusted most in the world have been planning your destruction. But I only let myself cry for an hour. Because crying wasn't going to save me. I needed a plan. The next few days were the longest of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal while my mind raced with plans and fears. Every time Patricia smiled at me, I wondered if she was thinking about that January 2nd date at Shady Grove Manor. Every time Michael called to check on things, I wondered if he was really checking on the timeline for stealing my life. But God works in mysterious ways, and sometimes he sends help from the most unexpected places. It was December 18th, a cold Tuesday morning, when I met Emma Rodriguez. I was sitting by Patricia's front window, watching the neighborhood wake up, when I saw a young woman struggling with grocery bags next door. She was clearly pregnant, maybe 7 or 8 months along, and one of her bags had torn open, spilling apples and canned goods across Mrs. Henderson's old driveway. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and headed outside. Patricia had told me not to leave the house without telling her. But this was an emergency, and some rules are meant to be broken when someone needs help. "Oh honey, let me help you with that," I called out, hurrying over as fast as my old legs would carry me. The young woman looked up, and I saw she had kind eyes and the prettiest smile, even though she looked exhausted. "Thank you so much," she said, breathing hard. I thought I could carry everything in one trip, but apparently baby brain extends to overestimating my abilities. I started gathering up the scattered groceries while she rubbed her back. "When are you due, sweetheart?" "February 15th, she said. "Valentine's baby," my husband keeps saying. I keep telling him this kid's going to be born demanding chocolate and flowers for life. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. "What's your name, honey?" "Oh, Emma Rodriguez. My husband and I just moved in next door last month. You must be Mrs." She paused, looking uncertain. "Washington. Dorothy Washington, though most folks just call me Miss Dorothy." Emma's face lit up. "Oh, you're the one who used to live in that adorable yellow house on Maple Street, aren't you? Mrs. Henderson mentioned you before she moved to Florida. She said you made the best sweet potato pie in 3 counties. My heart swelled. Someone remembered me. Someone knew who I was beyond just Patricia's burden. "That's me," I said, helping her gather the last of the groceries. "Though I haven't made a pie in months now. Well, if you ever feel like making one again, I'd be your first customer," Emma said, then paused. "Are you staying with your daughter?" Mrs. Henderson said Patricia was your girl. Something in her tone made me look at her more carefully. There was understanding in her eyes. The kind that comes from seeing too much in her line of work. Yes, I said simply. For now. Emma nodded like she heard all the things I couldn't say. Well, Miss Dorothy, I work odd hours. I'm a hospice nurse, so if you ever need anything or just want some company, I'm usually home during the day. And I mean that. Sometimes we all need someone to talk to who isn't family. The way she said family told me she understood more than she was letting on. Thank you, Emma. That's very kind. Not kind, she said, picking up her bags. Just human. I watched her walk to her door, and for the first time in months, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone in the world. When I got back inside, Patricia was standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed. Mama, where did you go? I came to check on you and you were gone. You can't just wander off like that. I wasn't wandering, I said, taking off my coat. I was helping our neighbor with her groceries. She's pregnant and… That's not the point, Patricia interrupted. What if something had happened to you? What if you'd fallen? Would be liable? Liable. Not concerned, not worried about my well-being, worried about their liability. I'm fine, Patricia. That's not the point, Mama. You're not thinking clearly lately. That's exactly why we need to make sure you're somewhere safe where people can keep an eye on you. There it was again. The setup. Every normal thing I did was evidence that I needed supervision. Every sign of independence was proof that I couldn't be trusted to take care of myself. But now I knew what they were really planning, so I just nodded and said, "You're right, baby. I should have told you." Patricia's expression softened and she patted my arm. I know you think I'm being overprotective, but it's because I love you. We all do. We just want what's best for you. If I hadn't seen those papers, I might have believed her. But love doesn't forge signatures. Love doesn't sell someone's home behind their back. Love doesn't calculate net gains from putting their mother in the cheapest facility they can find. That afternoon, while Patricia was at work, I saw Emma sitting on her front porch despite the cold, just staring at the street with her hands on her belly. Something about her posture reminded me of myself, like she was carrying a weight too heavy for her shoulders. I made 2 cups of hot tea and walked over. Mind if I join you? I asked. Emma looked up and I saw tears in her eyes that she quickly wiped away. Of course, Miss Dorothy, though I have to warn you, I'm not very good company today. I handed her a cup and sat down in the other porch chair. Some days aren't meant for good company. They're meant for honest company. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sipping our tea and watching the world go by. Finally, Emma spoke. Can I ask you something, Miss Dorothy? And please tell me if it's none of my business. Honey, at my age, there's very little that's still private. Ask away. Are you okay? Living with your daughter, I mean. Because in my work, I see a lot of families and sometimes free. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us the most are the ones who hurt us the worst. I looked at this young woman, this stranger who'd shown me more genuine concern in 2 days than my own children had shown in months, and made a decision that would change everything. No, I said quietly. I'm not okay. Emma set down her teacup and turned to face me fully. What's happening, Miss Dorothy? And for the first time since I discovered those papers, I told someone the truth. All of it. The forged power of attorney documents. The plans to sell my house. The nursing home application claiming I had dementia. The overheard conversations about dividing up my life savings. Emma listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with every detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Miss Dorothy, she said finally, what you're describing is elder abuse. Financial abuse, specifically, and it's a crime. But they're my children, I said, the words feeling hollow even as I spoke them. That makes it worse, not better. Emma leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. Being someone's child doesn't give you the right to steal from them, or lie to them, or forge their signature on legal documents. And claiming someone has dementia when they don't? That's not just morally wrong, it's fraud. I felt something shift inside my chest, like a door that had been locked for months suddenly swinging open. You believe me. You don't think I'm just a confused old woman. Emma's eyes flashed with anger. Not at me, but for me. Miss Dorothy, in the 20 minutes we've been talking, you've given me specific dates, exact dollar amounts, and detailed descriptions of complex legal documents. If you have dementia, then I'm the Queen of England. For the first time in months, I smiled a real smile. So what do? I asked. Emma was quiet for a moment, thinking. Well, legally you have options. Those forged signatures are evidence of fraud. The unauthorized sale of your house is theft. But, she paused. But what? But legal battles take time and money, and in the meantime, they still have control over your living situation. And honestly, Miss Dorothy, the system isn't always kind to elderly people who are fighting their own families. Sometimes judges assume the adult children know what's best. My heart sank. So there's nothing I can do. I didn't say that? Emma's voice got stronger. I said the legal route is complicated. But there are other ways to fight back. Ways that don't require proving your case to a judge who might have already made up his mind. What do you mean? Emma looked at me carefully. How much do you trust me? Miss Dorothy. It was a strange question from someone I'd known for less than a week, but somehow I knew the answer immediately. More than I trust my own children, apparently. Emma nodded. Then here's what I think we should do. But first, you need to know that once we start this, there's no going back. Your relationship with your children will never be the same. I thought about Patricia's cold dismissal when I tried to help with Thanksgiving dinner. I thought about Michael's calculating eyes as he talked about dividing up my assets. I thought about Sandra bringing forms for me to sign without explaining what they were. Emma, honey, I said, I don't think I have a relationship with my children to preserve. What I have is 3 strangers who happen to share my DNA and are planning to throw me away like garbage. Emma reached over and squeezed my hand. Then let's make sure that doesn't happen. Over the next hour, Emma laid out a plan that was both simple and brilliant. The key, she explained, was documentation and timing. First, we need to document everything, she said. Every conversation, every paper you can safely photograph, every action they take. I have a friend who's a paralegal. She can help us understand exactly what laws they're breaking. But how do I get evidence without them knowing? Emma smiled. Miss Dorothy, you've been invisible to them for months, right? They don't see you as a threat because they don't see you as a person. We're going to use that? The plan was this. I would continue to act like the confused, compliant old woman they thought I was, while secretly gathering evidence of their crimes. Emma would help me document everything and research my legal options. But more importantly, she would help me figure out how to reclaim my independence before they could ship me off to Shady Grove Manor. The beautiful thing is, Emma said, they've been so focused on stealing your money that they've forgotten something important. What's that? You're still alive, Miss Dorothy. You still have rights, and you still have choices, even if they've tried to convince you otherwise. As I walked back to Patricia's house that evening, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. Not just hope that I might survive what my children were doing to me, but hope that I might actually win. But first I had to make it through Christmas without letting them know I was onto their plan. Because according to those papers I'd found, my transfer to Shady Grove Manor was scheduled for January 2nd, just 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to gather evidence, build a case, and figure out how to save my own life. That night I lay in that narrow bed and didn't cry. Instead, I planned. And for the first time since I'd moved into Patricia's house, I fell asleep with a smile on my face. Tomorrow the fight for my life would begin in earnest. But tonight I wasn't alone anymore. I had an ally. And sometimes, that's all the hope you need to change everything. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. For the first time since moving into Patricia's house, I had something to do besides sit quietly and wait for my life to be decided for me. Emma had given me a small notebook, the kind nurses use for their shifts, and told me to write down everything. Every conversation, every strange look, every time someone made a decision about my life without asking me. Evidence, she'd said, is just truth that someone bothered to write down. My first entry was from that very morning. December 19th, 7:30 a.m., Patricia told Robert at breakfast she thought I was still asleep. Mom seems more confused lately. Yesterday she wandered outside without telling anyone. I think we need to move up the timeline. Robert said, are all the papers ready? Patricia said, Michael's handling the final details. We can have her moved right after Christmas if needed. Writing it down made it real in a way that just remembering couldn't. These weren't just hurtful words anymore. They were evidence of a conspiracy. Around 10 a.m., Patricia left for a client showing, and I had my first real opportunity to put Emma's plan into action. I needed photographs of those documents, but I also needed to be smart about it. I'd noticed that Patricia kept her phone charging on the kitchen counter when she was home. It was one of those newer models with a good camera, and more importantly, it automatically backed up photos to some kind of cloud storage. If I used Patricia's own phone to photograph the evidence of her crimes, The pictures would be saved where she couldn't delete them, even if she discovered what I was doing. The irony was perfect. I went to her office and carefully removed the folder labeled State Planning. My hands weren't shaking this time. I was angry now, and anger is steadier than fear. Using Patricia's phone, I photographed every page, the forged power of attorney forms, the unauthorized bank transfers, the house sale contract, the nursing home application with its lies about my mental state, the handwritten note calculating how much money they'd make from getting rid of me. 23 photographs total. 23 pieces of evidence that my own children had been systematically stealing my life. But I wasn't done. Emma had suggested I look for other documents. Anything that might show the full scope of what they were doing. In the back of the folder, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a typed letter addressed to Shady Grove Manor, signed with Patricia's name, but written like it was from me. Dear Administrator, I am writing to confirm my voluntary admission to your facility on January 2nd. Due to my increasing confusion and memory issues, my daughter Patricia Washington has been granted full power of attorney to handle all my financial and medical decisions. I understand that my Social Security and pension payments will be automatically transferred to cover the costs of my care, and I am grateful that my children are handling these complicated matters for me. I look forward to the peace of mind that comes with professional supervision. Sincerely, Dorothy Mae Washington. They had written my surrender letter. They had put words in my mouth that I would never say, created a version of me that was grateful to be discarded, happy to be forgotten. I photographed that letter with Patricia's phone, and then I did something Emma hadn't suggested. I used the phone to call Shady Grove Manor. Good morning, Shady Grove Manor, this is Jennifer. Hello, this is Dorothy Washington. I believe my daughter Patricia has been in contact with you about admission arrangements. Oh yes, Mrs. Washington. How are you feeling today? Your daughter mentioned you've been having some difficult days lately. There it was. They'd already started spreading the lies about my mental state. Actually, I'm feeling quite clear today, which is why I'm calling. Could you tell me what arrangements have been made? Of course. You're scheduled for admission on January 2nd. Your daughter has handled all the paperwork and financial arrangements. She's such a devoted daughter, making sure you'll be safe and cared for. What financial arrangements specifically? Jennifer's voice became more careful. Well, your Social Security and pension will cover the basic care costs. Your daughter mentioned that's about all you have for income, so we've put you in one of our more affordable rooms. It's small but clean, and you'll have a lovely roommate. My mouth went dry. And what did my daughter say about my other assets? My house, my savings? There was a pause. Mrs. Washington, your daughter explained that you don't have any other assets. She said the family has been supporting you financially for quite some time. They hadn't just planned to steal my money. They'd already told the nursing home it didn't exist. I see. I managed. Thank you for the information, Mrs. Washington. Are you all right? You sound upset. Should I call your daughter? No, I'm fine. Just getting my thoughts organized. That's understandable. Moving to a care facility can be overwhelming, especially when memory issues make things confusing. But don't worry. We'll take good care of you. I hung up before I said something that would get back to Patricia. Memory issues. Confusing. They'd poisoned the well so thoroughly that even my questions about my own finances were being interpreted as evidence of dementia. I put the documents back exactly as I'd found them and went to sit in my room, but I couldn't stay still. The anger was building inside me like steam in a kettle, and I needed to let some of it out before I exploded. Around noon, I saw Emma's car pull into her driveway. I grabbed my coat and the notebook and headed next door. Emma took one look at my face and ushered me inside. Her house was small but warm, with soft furniture and the kind of lived-in comfort that Patricia's pristine home lacked. What happened? She asked, settling me on her couch with a cup of tea. I told her about the photographs, about the fake letter, about the phone call to Shady Grove Manor. With each detail, Emma's expression grew more serious. Miss Dorothy, she said when I finished, this is worse than I thought. They're not just stealing your money. They're stealing your identity. That fake letter. The lies to the nursing home about your assets. This is sophisticated fraud. But what can I do about it? Everyone believes them. Even the nursing home thinks I'm just a confused old woman. Emma was quiet for a moment thinking. Then she got up and went to her kitchen, returning with her laptop. Let me show you something, she said, opening the computer. I've been doing some research since we talked yesterday. She pulled up several websites about elder abuse, legal resources, and advocacy groups. But more importantly, she showed me something I hadn't expected. There's a local news station, Channel 7, that's been doing a series on elder abuse in nursing homes. Look at this. She showed me a news story about a family in the next county who had done almost exactly what my children were doing. Forged documents, unauthorized asset transfers, lies about the victim's mental capacity. What happened to them? I asked. They were arrested, all 3 adult children, and the elderly father. He got his house back, his money back. And he's living independently with home health support. Emma turned the laptop so I could see the screen better. Miss Dorothy, what your children are doing isn't just morally wrong. It's criminal. And more importantly, it's not uncommon. There are people who specialize in fighting exactly this kind of abuse. She clicked on another link. This is Sarah Chen. She's an elder rights attorney here in the city, and she takes these cases pro bono, that means free, because she's passionate about stopping financial abuse of seniors. I stared at the woman's photograph on the screen. She looked young, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a determined expression. Do you think she'd help me? I think she'd be thrilled to help you. But Miss Dorothy, you need to understand, if we go this route, it's going to get ugly. Your children aren't just going to admit what they've done and give everything back. They're going to fight, and they're going to say terrible things about you to justify their actions. I thought about Patricia's cold dismissal, Michael's calculating conversations, Sandra's forms that I wasn't allowed to read before signing. Emma, honey, I said, they've already been saying terrible things about me. The difference is, now I have proof of what they've really been doing. Emma smiled. Then let's call Sarah Chen. The phone call was both terrifying and exhilarating. Sarah Chen listened to my story without interruption, asking for specific details about dates, amounts, and documents. When I told her about the photographs I'd taken with Patricia's phone, she actually laughed. Mrs. Washington, she said, in 20 years of practicing elder law, I've never had a client who accidentally created such perfect digital evidence of their own case. Those photos are automatically dated and backed up to cloud storage that your daughter can't alter or delete. It's like they documented their own crimes for us. So you'll help me. Mrs. Washington, I wouldn't miss this case for the world, but I need you to understand what we're up against. Your children have been planning this for months, maybe longer. They've got forged legal documents, and they've already started the process of having you declared incompetent. We're going to have to move fast. How fast? You said they plan to move you to the nursing home on January 2nd. That's 2 weeks away. I need to file emergency motions to freeze all asset transfers and get a temporary restraining order preventing them from moving you anywhere. But to do that, I need you to meet with me tomorrow so we can go over everything in detail. My heart started racing. I don't know if I can get away from Patricia's house for that long without raising suspicion. Where does she think you are right now? Resting in my room. Then we tell her you have a doctor's appointment. A routine check-up that Emma is taking you to as a favor. Nothing suspicious about that. Emma nodded enthusiastically. I'll pick you up at 10 a.m. and bring you back after lunch. Patricia will never know. After we hung up, I sat in Emma's living room feeling like I just stepped off a cliff. There was no going back now. Tomorrow, I would officially begin the fight for my life. That evening, I acted exactly like the confused, compliant old woman my children thought I was. I let Patricia fuss over my dinner. I nodded when Michael called to check on me. I smiled weakly when Sandra stopped by with more forms for me to sign, when I felt up to it. But inside I was planning their downfall. That night, I made my final notebook entry before the war began, December 19th, 8:30 p.m. They still think I'm helpless. They still think I'm confused. They still think I'm grateful for their care. Tomorrow they're going to find out that 78 years old doesn't mean dead. And Dorothy Mae Washington is far from finished fighting. I closed the notebook and put it in my pillowcase. In 12 hours, I would walk into Sarah Chen's office and officially begin taking my life back. But first, I had to make it through one more night of pretending to be the victim they'd made me into. One more night of being invisible. After tomorrow, I planned to be impossible to ignore. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Patricia discovering what I'd done, or worse, moving up their timeline and shipping me off to Shady Grove before I could meet with Sarah Chen. By 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep and sat by the window, watching the sun rise and praying for strength. At breakfast, I almost lost my nerve. Patricia was being unusually nice, making my coffee just the way I liked it, and asking if I wanted her to pick up anything special from the grocery store. For a moment, I wondered if I'd misunderstood everything. Maybe this was all some terrible mistake. Maybe my children really did love me and were just bad at showing it. Then Patricia's phone rang. "Hi, Michael," she said, walking into the next room but not lowering her voice enough. "No, she's been quiet. I think the medication is helping." "What medication?" "Peterson prescribed something mild to help with her confusion." "No, she doesn't know she's taking it. I've been putting it in her morning coffee." My blood turned to ice. They'd been drugging me. That explained the fogginess I'd been feeling some mornings, the way my thoughts seemed to move through molasses on certain days. They hadn't just been stealing my money and my home, they'd been stealing my mind. The timeline. Everything's on track for January 2nd. Right, the sooner the better. She's been asking more questions lately. I forced myself to keep eating my cereal, to keep my expression blank, even though inside I was screaming. When Patricia came back to the kitchen, she was all smiles. "Everything okay, Mama?" "Fine, baby," I managed. "Just enjoying this good coffee you made me." Patricia's smile got wider. "I'm glad you like it. I've been trying a new recipe." A new recipe? With medication I didn't know I was taking. At 9:45, Emma knocked on the door, and I felt like a prisoner about to attempt a jailbreak. "Ready for your doctor's appointment, Miss Dorothy?" she asked loudly enough for Patricia to hear. "Doctor's appointment?" Patricia looked confused. "Oh, I'm sorry," Emma said smoothly. "I thought you knew. Miss Dorothy mentioned she needed to see Dr. Martinez for a routine check-up, and since I had the day off, I offered to drive her. With her vision being what it is, I didn't want her taking the bus. It was a perfect lie. Patricia couldn't object without seeming uncaring. And the detail about my vision, which was actually fine, reinforced their narrative that I couldn't take care of myself. "Well, that's very thoughtful," Patricia said, but I could see suspicion in her eyes. "Mama, you didn't mention a doctor's appointment." I put on my most confused expression. "Didn't I?" "I thought I did. Sometimes I get mixed up about what I've said and what I've just thought about saying." Patricia's expression softened. There it was. I'd given her exactly the kind of evidence of confusion she expected. "Of course, Mama." "Emma, how long will this take?" "A few hours, probably. You know how doctors' offices are. But I'll have her back by early afternoon." I grabbed my coat and my purse, making sure the notebook was hidden inside. As we walked to Emma's car, I felt like I was escaping from prison. "How are you holding up?" Emma asked once we were safely in her car. "They've been drugging me," I said, my voice shaking. "Putting something in my coffee to make me confused." Emma's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What kind of medication?" "I don't know. Patricia mentioned Dr. Peterson, but I've never seen Dr. Peterson. I haven't seen any doctor since I moved in with them." "Miss Dorothy, that's not just elder abuse, that's assault. Giving someone medication without their knowledge or consent is a felony." We drove in silence for a few minutes while I absorbed that information. My children weren't just thieves. They were criminals in every sense of the word. Sarah Chen's office was in a modest building downtown, nothing fancy but professional and welcoming. Sarah herself was exactly what I'd hoped for. Direct, intelligent, and clearly angry about what had been done to me. "Mrs. Washington," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "After our phone call yesterday, I did some preliminary research into your case. What your children are doing isn't just wrong, it's textbook elder financial abuse. And it's more common than most people realize." She led us to a conference room where she'd spread out legal documents and forms. "Before we begin, I want you to understand that we're going to win this case. The evidence you've gathered is extraordinary. But it's going to be a fight, and your children are going to say and do things that will hurt. They're already hurting me," I said quietly. "At least this way I'm fighting back." Sarah smiled. "Good. Now, let's talk about immediate steps." For the next 2 hours, Sarah walked me through the legal process. First, she would file emergency motions to freeze all asset transfers and prevent my children from accessing my accounts. Second, she would request an immediate competency evaluation by an independent doctor to counter their claims about my mental state. Third, she would file for an emergency restraining order preventing them from moving me to any care facility without court approval. "The beautiful thing about your case," Sarah explained, "is that they've been so confident you couldn't fight back that they've documented everything. These photographs you took are smoking gun evidence, and the fact that you used Patricia's phone means the metadata proves when, and where the photos were taken. They can't claim you fabricated them. What about the house? They're supposed to close on the sale January 15th? We'll get an injunction stopping that sale. And Mrs. Washington, when this is over, you'll not only get your house back, you'll get damages for everything they've stolen, plus attorney's fees and punitive damages for the emotional distress they've caused. Emma spoke up. What about the medication they've been giving her without her knowledge? Sarah's expression darkened. That's criminal assault. We'll be referring that to the district attorney's office for prosecution. Your children could face jail time for that alone. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. These were my babies I was talking about sending to jail, but they'd stop being my babies the moment they decided I was worth more to them dead than alive. What do I do now? I asked. You go home and act normal for 3 more days. Don't let them know you suspect anything. Don't stop taking the medication. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you suddenly seem more alert, they might get suspicious and move faster. On December 23rd, I'll have all the paperwork filed and the court orders in place. That's when we confront them. Confront them how? Sarah's smile was sharp. Oh, Mrs. Washington, we're going to walk into that house with a sheriff's deputy, a court order, and an independent social worker. We're going to serve them with papers, freeze their access to your assets, and inform them that they're under criminal investigation for elder abuse, fraud, and assault. My heart was pounding. And then what? And then you decide where you want to live. Your house, an apartment, an assisted living community of your choosing. Whatever makes you happy and safe. The only thing you can't do is continue living with people who are stealing from you and drugging you. As we drove back to Patricia's house, I felt like a different person than the one who had left that morning. I had a plan now, I had allies, I had hope. But most importantly, I had my power back. Emma, I said as we pulled into the driveway, how can I ever thank you for this? Miss Dorothy, you don't need to thank me. You just need to promise me something. What's that? Promise me that when this is over, you'll make that sweet potato pie. I want to see you in your own kitchen again, cooking because you want to, not because someone will let you. I squeezed her hand. Honey, when this is over, I'm going to make you a pie so good you'll think you've died and gone to heaven. As I walked back into Patricia's house, I felt like I was wearing a disguise. To her, I was still the confused, helpless old woman they'd been systematically destroying, but underneath I was Dorothy Mae Washington, 70, 8 years old and done being anyone's victim. How did your appointment go? Mama, Patricia asked. Oh, fine. Dr. Martinez says I'm doing as well as can be expected for someone my age. I paused, then added, though he did mention my memory seems better than he expected. Said sometimes these things fluctuate. I watched Patricia's face carefully. There it was, a flicker of concern. If my memory was getting better instead of worse, their timeline might need to change. Well, that's nice, Mama. Did he change any of your medications? No, he said to keep taking everything exactly as I have been. Patricia relaxed. Good, consistency is important. That evening, Patricia and Robert had another one of their hushed conversations in the kitchen. I didn't need to eavesdrop this time. I knew what they were discussing. They were probably wondering if they should move faster, if waiting until January 2nd was too risky. Let them worry, I thought. In 3 days, they're going to have much bigger problems to deal with. For that night, I made what I hoped would be my last entry in the notebook, December 20th, 10:30 p.m., 3 more days of pretending. 3 more days of being invisible. But not because I'm helpless. Because I'm planning their destruction. They think they've won, but they haven't even seen the real fight yet. Free, Dorothy Mae Washington is about to remind them exactly who raised them, and exactly what happens when you cross someone who's been through too much to be scared of anything anymore. I put the notebook back in my pillowcase and settled in to wait. December 23rd couldn't come fast enough. The next 3 days were the most difficult of my entire life. Every smile I gave Patricia felt like swallowing poison. Every time I pretended to be confused, I had to resist the urge to tell her exactly how clear my mind really was. But the hardest part was drinking that coffee every morning, knowing it contained medication meant to steal my thoughts. December 21st and 22nd passed in a blur of fake normalcy. Patricia decorated the house for Christmas, not because she wanted me to feel included, but because maintaining appearances was important. Michael came by with more papers for me to sign, which I pretended to review with confusion before signing in my shaky, drugged handwriting. Sandra brought over Christmas cookies and asked how I was adjusting to the idea. of my upcoming move. What move? I asked, playing confused. To your new home, Mama? Sandra said patiently. Remember, we talked about how you'd be more comfortable somewhere with people to help you. Oh, yes, I said vaguely. Though I can't quite remember when that's supposed to happen. Soon, Mama. Very soon. On December 22nd, something happened that almost broke my cover completely. Patricia announced that they wouldn't be having Christmas dinner at the house this year. We're going to Robert's mother's house, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. It's going to be a big family gathering, and with your condition, we thought it might be overwhelming for you. My condition? You know, Mama. The confusion, the memory problems. Large groups can be stressful when you're dealing with those issues. I stared at her. Are you saying I'm not invited to Christmas dinner? Of course you're invited. But we think it would be better if you rested here. I'll make you a nice plate and bring it home. She was planning to leave me alone on Christmas. After stealing my money, my house, and my independence, she was going to abandon me on the most important family day of the year. I see, I said quietly. Don't look so sad, Mama. It's just one Christmas. Next year you'll be settled in your new place, and we can visit you there. Next year. She actually thought there would be a next year of this. That night, I called Sarah Chen from Patricia's landline while she was out Christmas shopping. Mrs. Washington, is everything all right? They're leaving me alone tomorrow. Christmas Day, I needed someone to know. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Washington, I want you to listen to me. Tomorrow is the last Christmas you will ever spend as their victim. December 23rd, that's the day after tomorrow. Everything changes. Can you hold on for one more day? I think so. Good, and Mrs. Washington, when this is over, you're going to have the best Christmas of your life. I promise you that. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold. I woke up early and sat by the window, watching the neighborhood families bundling into cars to go to church or to visit relatives. Normal families, loving families, families that didn't abandon their elderly mothers on Christmas Day. Patricia appeared around 8 a.m., already dressed for the day. Merry Christmas, Mama, she said, kissing my cheek with all the warmth of someone going through the motions. I've left you some breakfast on the counter, and there's leftover soup in the refrigerator for lunch. We should be back by evening. Merry Christmas, baby. She paused at the door. Oh, and Mama. It's supposed to get cold today, so don't go outside. We wouldn't want you to get sick. And then she was gone. Along with Robert and the kids, who barely said goodbye. I heard their car pull away, and suddenly the house was silent except for the humming of the refrigerator and the ticking of Patricia's expensive clock. I sat in that empty house for an hour, fighting waves of loneliness and hurt. But then I remembered what Sarah had said. This was the last Christmas I would spend as their victim. Around 10 a.m., I saw Emma's car in the driveway next door and realized she was home too. Without thinking twice, I put on my coat and walked over. Miss Dorothy! Emma opened the door with genuine surprise and joy. What are you doing here? I thought you'd be having Christmas with Patricia's family. They went to Robert's mother's house, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They thought it would be too overwhelming for me. Emma's face went through several expressions before settling on quiet rage. They left you alone on Christmas. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Well, Emma said, opening the door wider, their loss is our gain. Come on in. Carlos and I were just making tamales and feeling sorry for ourselves that we don't have anywhere to go either. Emma's husband Carlos was a gentle man with kind eyes who welcomed me like I was family. We spent the morning cooking together, really cooking, not just being allowed to watch, and for the first time in months, I felt useful. I helped Emma with the masa while Carlos told stories about Christmas in Mexico when he was a boy. You know what's missing? I said around noon. Dessert. Do you have sweet potatoes? Emma's face lit up. Miss Dorothy, are you offering to make your famous pie? Honey, it's Christmas. Of course I'm making pie. We sent Carlos to the store for ingredients, and I spent the afternoon in Emma's kitchen making sweet potato pie from scratch. My hands remembered the recipe my own mother had taught me 60 years ago. As I worked, I told Emma and Carlos stories about Christmases past, about my children when they were small and still believed in magic, about traditions I'd thought were lost forever. When the pie came out of the oven, golden and perfect, I felt more like myself than I had in months. Miss Dorothy, Carlos said, taking his first bite, this is the best pie I've ever had in my life. It tastes like love, Emma added, and I had to blink back tears. Around 4 p.m., we were sitting in Emma's living room, full of good food and warm conversation when we heard a car in Patricia's driveway. "They're back," I said. Emma looked at me carefully. "How are you feeling?" "Strong," I said, and meant it. "Tomorrow changes everything?" "Tomorrow changes everything," Emma agreed. I walked back to Patricia's house feeling completely different than I had that morning. I wasn't alone. I had people who cared about me. I wasn't helpless. I had a plan. I wasn't forgotten. I had allies who would fight for me. Patricia was in the kitchen when I came in, putting away leftovers from their Christmas dinner. "There you are, Mama." I was starting to worry. "Where did you go?" "Next door. Emma and Carlos invited me for Christmas dinner." Patricia's expression tightened. "Mama, you can't just go wandering over to the neighbor's house." "What if something had happened to you?" "Something did happen to me," I said quietly. I remembered what Christmas is supposed to feel like. Patricia stared at me for a moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Maybe guilt, maybe fear. But then her expression hardened. "Well, I'm glad you had a nice time, but in the future, you need to let us know where you're going. We're responsible for you now, responsible for me, not caring about me, not loving me. Responsible for me like I was a burden to be managed." "Of course, dear," I said, giving her the confused smile she expected. "I'll try to remember." That evening, the house settled into its normal routine. Patricia and her family watched Christmas movies in the living room while I sat in my little back bedroom, supposedly reading. But I wasn't reading, I was planning. Tomorrow, Sarah Chen would file the emergency motions. Tomorrow, the sheriff's deputy would serve papers. Tomorrow, my children would discover that Dorothy Mae Washington wasn't as helpless as they'd thought. But tonight, I had one more thing to do. I waited until everyone was asleep, then I quietly made my way to Patricia's home office one more time. Not to gather evidence. I already had everything I needed. This time I had a different purpose. I sat at Patricia's desk and wrote a letter. Not a legal document, not evidence for court. Just a letter from a mother to her children, explaining what they had done and how it felt to be betrayed by the people you loved most in the world. I wrote about the little girl who used to climb into my lap when she was scared, and how that little girl had grown into a woman who was willing to drug her own mother. I wrote about the boy who used to bring me flowers he'd picked from the neighbor's yard, and how he'd become a man who calculated the profit from selling his mother's home. I wrote about the youngest, who became a nurse because she wanted to help people, but had helped plan my imprisonment instead. I wrote about love and disappointment and the difference between being someone's mother and being someone's burden. When I finished, I folded the letter and put it on Patricia's desk, where she would find it tomorrow, after the legal papers had been served, after the sheriff had left, after their world had been turned upside down. The letter ended with these words: "You taught me that blood doesn't make you family. Love makes you family, and what you've done to me isn't love, it's theft. Tomorrow you'll discover that 78 years old doesn't mean dead, and Dorothy Mae Washington isn't finished fighting for her life. You wanted to erase me, but instead, you've reminded me exactly who I am. I am your mother, but more importantly, I am my own person. And this person is taking her life back." I went back to my room and packed the few things that really mattered to me in a small bag: my Bible, my mother's wedding ring, and the notebook full of evidence. Tomorrow, one way or another, I wouldn't be sleeping in Patricia's house. As I lay in that narrow bed for the last time, I thought about the Christmas I just had. Not the lonely morning or the family that had abandoned me, but the afternoon spent cooking with people who valued me, laughing with people who included me, feeling useful and loved and remembered. That was what I was fighting for. Not just my money or my house, though I intended to get both back. I was fighting for the right to be seen, to be heard, to matter. Tomorrow, December 23rd, the war would begin in earnest. But tonight, for the first time in months, Dorothy Mae Washington went to sleep feeling like herself again. I woke up on December 23rd feeling like a soldier preparing for battle. After months of being treated like a confused old woman, today I would remind everyone exactly who Dorothy Mae Washington really was. Sarah Chen had called the night before with final instructions. The sheriff's deputy would arrive at 10 a.m. sharp with the court orders. I needed to be dressed and ready, with my important documents and any belongings I wanted to take immediately. Most importantly, I needed to stay calm and let the legal process work. "Remember, Mrs. Washington," Sarah had said, "today you're not their victim anymore. Today you're a citizen exercising your legal rights. Hold your head high." At 8 a.m., I got dressed in my best dress, The navy blue one I'd worn to church for 20 years. I did my hair carefully and put on the lipstick I hadn't bothered with in months. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not a confused old woman, but Dorothy Mae Washington, ready to fight for her life. Patricia was in the kitchen making coffee, my drug coffee that I wouldn't have to pretend to drink much longer. "Good morning, Mama. You're up early, and you look nice. Are we going somewhere?" "Not we, Patricia." "Me?" Something in my tone made her look at me more carefully. For just a moment, I let her see the real me, alert, angry, and absolutely done with her games. "Mama, are you feeling all right?" "I'm feeling clearer than I have in months, actually." At exactly 10 a.m., I heard cars pulling into the driveway. Looking out the window, I saw Sarah Chen getting out of one car and a uniformed sheriff's deputy getting out of another. Behind them was a third car with a woman I recognized from photos as Dr. Jennifer Martinez, the independent psychologist who would evaluate my mental competency. The doorbell rang. Patricia looked confused. Who could that be? She walked to the front door and opened it, and I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Patricia Washington." Sarah Chen's voice was crisp and professional. "Yes, who's asking?" "I'm Sarah Chen, attorney for Dorothy Mae Washington. This is Deputy Rodriguez with the Sheriff's Department and Dr. Martinez from Adult Protective Services. We have court orders we need to serve you." I walked into the living room just in time to see Patricia's face go white. "Court orders? I don't understand. Is this about?" She stopped and looked at me. "Mama, what's going on?" "What's going on, Patricia, is that I'm taking my life back." Deputy Rodriguez stepped forward. "Mom, I need you to step aside while we serve these papers." "Is Michael Washington or Sandra Washington, Cole, on the premises?" "Michael's at work, Sandra's at her house." "I don't understand what." "Mom," the deputy interrupted, "free. You're being served with an emergency restraining order preventing you from making any financial transactions related to Dorothy Washington's assets and from moving her to any care facility without court approval. You're also being served with notice that you're under criminal investigation for elder abuse, financial fraud, and assault." Patricia's legs gave out and she sat down hard on her expensive couch. "Criminal investigation? This is insane, Mama. Tell them. Tell them you're happy here. That we're taking care of you." I looked at my daughter, my firstborn, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep and sung lullabies to, and felt nothing but sadness. "Patricia, the only thing I'm going to tell them is the truth. That you forged my signature on legal documents. That you've been selling my house without my knowledge. That you've been drugging me to make me seem confused. And that you plan to dump me in the cheapest nursing home you could find while you split my life savings 3 ways. Patricia's mouth fell open. You? You knew. Honey, I've known for weeks. I've been documenting everything you've done, and now I have lawyers and law enforcement who believe me. Sarah stepped forward. "Mrs. Washington, we need to get you out of this environment immediately. Do you have somewhere safe to go?" Before I could answer, Emma appeared in the doorway behind the officials. "She's staying with us until her house situation is resolved," she announced firmly. Patricia found her voice again. "You can't do this! She's my mother! She's confused! She has dementia! Look at her medical records!" Dr. Martinez spoke for the first time. "Actually, I'm here to conduct an independent competency evaluation. Mrs. Washington, are you willing to be examined?" "I would be delighted," I said. For the next hour, while Patricia sat in stunned silence, Martinez asked me detailed questions about my finances, my living situation, my medical history, and my understanding of what was happening. I answered every question clearly and completely, providing specific dates, amounts, and documentation. "Mrs. Washington," Dr. Martinez said finally, "in my professional opinion, you show no signs of dementia, confusion, or impaired judgment. You are fully competent to make your own decisions about your living situation, finances, and medical care." Patricia jumped up. "That's impossible! She's been confused for months!" "Ask her doctor." "What doctor?" I asked. "Patricia, I haven't seen a doctor since I moved in with you." "Dr. Peterson, the one you mentioned prescribing medication for me." "I've never heard of him." Sarah pulled out a folder. "Actually, we've done some investigating. There is no Dr. Peterson in this area. The medication your daughter has been giving you was obtained illegally, probably through online pharmacies using false information." Deputy Rodriguez stepped forward again. "Patricia Washington, you have the right to remain silent." "Wait!" Patricia screamed. "This is all a misunderstanding! Mama, tell them! Tell them how confused you've been. How you haven't been able to take care of yourself." I looked at her with all the love and disappointment a mother can feel. "Patricia, The only thing I was confused about was how the daughter I raised to be kind and honest could become someone who would steal from her own mother. That's when Patricia broke down completely. We needed the money. Do you know how expensive everything is? The kids' college, the mortgage, Robert's business loan. You have more money than you need. Just sitting there while we're struggling? So you decided to take it. We decided to manage it, to make sure you were taken care of while helping the family, be putting me in Shady Grove Manor and telling them I had no assets. Patricia's face crumpled. How did you? We never told you about Shady Grove. I called them myself, pretended to be checking on arrangements. They told me all about how my devoted daughter had arranged the cheapest possible care, because I had no money. Michael chose that moment to arrive, walking through the door and straight into chaos. What's going on? Patricia, why are there police cars in the... Mama. Deputy Rodriguez turned to him. Michael Washington. You're also being served with court orders and notice of criminal investigation. Michael looked around the room, at the officials, at the papers, at Patricia crying on the couch, at me standing straight and strong in my best dress. You did this, he said to me, and for the first time I heard hatred in my son's voice. You ungrateful old woman, we were trying to help you. Help me? I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. Michael, you calculated that putting me in a nursing home and stealing my assets would net the family $335,000. I saw your math. That's not helping me, that's profiting from my death. Sarah stepped forward. Actually, Mr. Washington, what you've done is elder financial abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. These are felony charges. You could face 5 to 10 years in prison. Michael's face went gray. This is ridiculous. She's our mother. We can't steal from our own mother. Actually, Dr. Martinez said, elder abuse by family members is the most common form of elder abuse in America, and the law doesn't make exceptions for family relationships. It took another hour to serve all the papers and explain all the legal restrictions now in place. My bank accounts were frozen except for my access. The sale of my house was stopped. Any attempt to move me to a care facility without court approval would result in immediate arrest. As the officials prepared to leave, Sarah turned to Patricia and Michael. Your sister Sandra will be served with papers at her home this afternoon. The three of you need to contact attorneys immediately. And understand this, every document you forged, every lie you told, every dollar you stole has been documented. Mrs. Washington doesn't just want her money back, she wants justice. After everyone left except Emma and me, the house was silent except for Patricia's quiet crying. Mama, she said finally, I'm sorry. I know you probably don't believe me, but I really thought we were doing what was best. I sat down across from her, this stranger who used to be my little girl. Patricia, I need you to understand something. I would have given you money if you'd asked. If you'd come to me and said, Mama, we're struggling, can you help? I would have helped. I've been helping you your whole life. Then why are you doing this to us? Because you didn't ask for help. You decided to take everything. You decided I was better off in a nursing home than in my own home. You decided I was too confused to make my own decisions. You decided to drug me to make me actually confused. You didn't want my help. Patricia, you wanted me gone. Patricia was quiet for a long time. Finally, she looked up at me with swollen eyes. What happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices. And I go home, to my house on Maple Street, my house that you were going to sell without asking me. I stood up and picked up the small bag I'd packed. Mama, wait. Can we fix this somehow? I looked at her one more time. Patricia, you can't fix breaking someone's heart by saying you're sorry. You can't fix months of lies and theft and betrayal with an apology. What you can do is face what you've done like an adult and maybe, someday, figure out how to become someone I could be proud of again. Emma helped me to her car, and as we drove away, I didn't look back. That afternoon, I sat in Emma's kitchen while she made tea, and I called my friend Gladys from church. The first call I'd been allowed to make in months. Dorothy Mae Washington? Gladys screamed into the phone. Girl, where have you been? We've been worried sick. It's a long story, Gladys, but I'm coming home. And I'm going to need some help cleaning up my house. Think the church ladies might want to help with a homecoming? Honey, we'll have that house spotless and your refrigerator full before you can say hallelujah. When are you coming back? I looked at Emma, who was smiling at me over her teacup. Tomorrow, Gladys. I'm coming home tomorrow. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: excitement about the future. Tomorrow I would walk back into my own house, sleep in my own bed, cook in my own kitchen. I would restart my life at 78 years old, and it was going to be beautiful. 3 months later, I was standing in my own kitchen on Maple Street, making sweet potato pie for Easter dinner, when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer it. I'd learned to be very selective about who got my time and attention these days. But the caller ID showed Emma's number, so I picked up. "Miss Dorothy, turn on Channel 7 News. Right now." I dried my hands and walked to the living room, turning on the television just in time to see a familiar face on the screen. It was Patricia, wearing an orange jumpsuit, being led into a courthouse. Former real estate agent Patricia Washington was sentenced today to 18 months in prison for elder abuse and financial fraud, the reporter was saying. Along with her brothers Michael and Sandra Washington Cole, she was convicted of stealing over $300,000 from their elderly mother through forged documents and unauthorized asset transfers. The case drew national attention as an example of growing elder abuse by family members. I turned off the television and went back to my kitchen. The pie wasn't going to make itself, and I had people coming for dinner who actually wanted to be here. The legal battle had taken 4 months to resolve completely. Sarah Chen had been right. We'd won everything. I got my house back, every penny they'd stolen, plus damages for emotional distress and punitive damages that nearly doubled the total. More importantly, all 3 of my children had been convicted of felony elder abuse. Patricia got 18 months, Michael got 2 years. Sandra, who'd cooperated with prosecutors and shown genuine remorse, got probation and community service. But the real victory wasn't the money or even the justice. The real victory was the life I'd built for myself since coming home. Emma had been right about the church ladies. The day I returned to Maple Street, my little yellow house was spotless, my refrigerator was full, and there were flowers in every room. Gladys had organized a homecoming that felt more like a resurrection. "Dorothy May," she'd said, hugging me tight, "we knew something was wrong when you just disappeared like that. We should have fought harder to find you." "You couldn't have known," I'd told her. "I didn't even know myself how bad it was until it was almost too late." In the months since then, I'd rediscovered what it meant to live instead of just existing. I woke up in my own bed every morning and made my own decisions about how to spend my day. I went to church every Sunday and caught up with friends I hadn't seen in months. I started volunteering at the senior center, helping other elderly people navigate Medicare and Social Security, and watching for signs of the kind of abuse I'd experienced. Most importantly, I'd found my chosen family. Emma and Carlos had become the children I'd always wanted, attentive without being controlling, loving without being possessive. When Emma's baby was born in February, I was in the delivery room, holding her hand and crying tears of joy. Little Sofia Rodriguez had 3 grandparents now, even though only 2 of them were related by blood. My actual grandchildren, Patricia's kids Jasmine and Marcus, had reached out to me after the trial. They'd been horrified to learn what their parents had done and had spent months apologizing for not seeing what was happening. "We thought you really were confused, Grandma," Jasmine had said through tears during their first visit. "Mom and Dad kept saying you weren't yourself anymore. Baby girl," I'd told her. I wasn't myself, but not because I was confused. I wasn't myself because they wouldn't let me be. There's a difference. Both kids had decided to live with Robert's family during their parents' incarceration, but they visited me every other weekend. It was awkward at first. How do you rebuild a relationship with grandchildren who've seen your daughter sent to prison? But slowly, we were finding our way back to each other. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I looked through the window and smiled. Emma and Carlos were walking up the front path, Emma carrying baby Sophia, Carlos carrying a casserole dish. "Happy Easter, Miss Dorothy," Emma called out as I opened the door. "Happy Easter, family," I said back, because that's what they were now. As we settled around my dining room table, the same table where my children had eaten thousands of meals before they decided I was worth more to them gone than present, I looked around at the faces of people who chose to love me. Emma and Carlos, who'd saved my life by seeing me as a person worth saving. Gladys and 3 other church ladies who'd refused to let me disappear from their lives. Mrs. Henderson, who'd moved back from Florida and bought the house next to Emma's so she could be close to her Dorothy. Even Jasmine and Marcus, who were trying to rebuild a relationship with the grandmother they'd almost lost. "Miss Dorothy," Carlos said as I served the pie, "this is the best Easter I've ever had." "Mine too," I said, and meant it. After dinner, Emma and I sat on my front porch while the others played with the baby in the living room. It was a beautiful April afternoon, warm enough to sit outside but cool enough to be comfortable. Do you ever regret it? Emma asked quietly. Having them prosecuted, I mean. They were your children. I thought about it for a moment. It wasn't the first time someone had asked me that question. No, I said finally. I regret that it came to that. I regret that they chose money over love. I regret that they saw me as a burden instead of a person. But I don't regret fighting for my life. They could have had everything, Emma said. If they'd just loved you, treated you with respect, included you in decisions about your own life, you would have taken care of them in your will. That's the irony, isn't it? In trying to take everything from me while I was alive, they lost any chance of getting anything when I'm gone. I'd rewritten my will the week after I came home. The bulk of my estate would go to establish a foundation that helped elderly people fight financial abuse. There were provisions for Jasmine and Marcus's education, and a substantial gift to Emma and Carlos's family. My children would get nothing. Do you think they understand now what they did wrong? Emma asked. I thought about the letters I'd received from all three of them since the trial. Patricia's letters were full of self-pity and anger, blaming everyone but herself. Michael's were cold and formal, like business correspondence, but Sandra's letters showed real remorse, real understanding of the harm she'd caused. Sandra might, I said. The other two. I don't think they see past their own hurt to understand mine. They're hurt. I laughed, but it wasn't entirely bitter. They think I betrayed them by having them arrested. They can't see that they betrayed me first by deciding I was disposable. Emma was quiet for a moment. Do you miss them? I miss who I thought they were. I miss the children I raised, who wouldn't have done what they did. But those children apparently never existed, or they died somewhere along the way when money became more important than family. As the sun started to set, Emma gathered up her family to head home. I hugged each of them goodbye, breathing in the scent of baby Sophia's head and feeling grateful for the gift of chosen family. After they left, I walked through my house, turning off lights and checking locks. My house, my decisions, my life. In my bedroom, I sat at the little desk where I now wrote in a journal every night, not documenting abuse this time, but recording gratitude, plans, dreams for the future. April 20th, Easter Sunday. Had dinner with my real family today. Emma's baby is getting so big, and she smiled at me the whole time. Carlos made his mother's enchilada recipe, and it was perfect. The church ladies are planning a trip to Branson in June and want me to come along. Gladys says I need to get back out there and see the world. I think she's right. Jasmine called this afternoon to tell me she made the honor roll and wants to study social work in college. She says what happened to me made her want to help protect other elderly people. I'm proud of who she's becoming. I've been thinking about Patricia's letter again, the one where she said she hoped someday I could forgive them. I don't know if I can forgive what they did, but I've forgiven myself for loving them anyway. That's enough for now. Tomorrow I start volunteering at the legal aid clinic, helping other seniors with paperwork and advocacy. Sarah says they need people who understand the system and can relate to what abuse victims go through. I'm looking forward to it. 8 years old, and I'm just getting started. Who would have thought? I closed the journal and got ready for bed. As I turned off the lamp, I looked around my bedroom, my bed, my furniture, my choices about how to live my life. 6 months ago, I'd been a victim, invisible and powerless, counting down the days until my children discarded me like trash. Tonight, I was Dorothy Mae Washington, survivor and advocate, surrounded by people who loved me and planning a future full of purpose. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the beginning of the best thing that happens to you. Sometimes losing everything you thought you had helps you discover everything you actually need. I'd lost 3 children but gained a family. I'd lost my illusions but gained my power. I'd lost my trust in blood relations but gained my faith in chosen family. Most importantly, I'd lost my role as victim and gained my identity as victor. As I drifted off to sleep in my own bed, in my own house, surrounded by the love of people who chose to see me as valuable, I smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help other people find their own strength, new chances to build the life I wanted rather than accept the life others wanted to give me. At 8 years old, Dorothy Mae Washington was just getting started. And that, I thought as sleep took me, was the sweetest victory of all. 5 years later, The Dorothy Mae Washington Foundation for Elder Rights has helped over 500 elderly Americans fight financial abuse by family members. The foundation, funded by my settlement money and donations from supporters, provides legal aid, advocacy, and safe housing for seniors who find themselves victims of the people they trusted most. I speak at conferences now, telling my story to social workers, lawyers, and law enforcement officers. I've been on television, testified before Congress, and written a book about recognizing and fighting elder abuse. But my favorite part of the work is still sitting across from frightened, confused elderly people who think they're alone and telling them the most important thing anyone ever told me: you are not helpless. You are not disposable, you matter. And there are people who will fight for you if you're ready to fight for yourself. Patricia was released from prison last year. She sends me birthday cards now, but she's never admitted that what she did was wrong. Michael got out 6 months ago and moved to another state. Sandra completed her probation and has become a volunteer with our foundation, working to make amends by helping other families avoid the mistakes hers made. My grandchildren are both in college now, both studying fields that help people, social work and law. They visit often, and they tell people their grandmother taught them that family isn't about blood, it's about choice. Emma's daughter Sophia calls me Abula Dorothy, and at age 5, she makes the best sweet potato pie assistant in 3 counties. Emma and Carlos bought the house across the street from me last year, so we're officially neighbors for life. I'm 83 years old now, and I've never been happier or felt more useful. Every day, I wake up grateful, not for what was done to me, but for what I did about it. Not for the family that betrayed me, but for the family that chose me. Not for the victim I was, but for the victor I became. My name is Dorothy Mae Washington, and this is my story. If it sounds like yours, remember this: you are stronger than you know, you have more power than they want you to believe, and you are never too old to take your life back. The fight isn't easy, but you are worth fighting for, and you are never ever alone.